Hello and welcome to this special edition of Gate City Insider. I'm Carla Banks, the Communications and Marketing Director for the City of Greensboro. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Deputy City Manager Chris Wilson. Mr. Wilson has been a key component to our organization, serving this community for 33 years. Now we celebrate his long list of contributions in a moment of reflection as he enters into retirement. Hello, Chris. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we're going to go way back to your introduction into municipal government, and that started in your late teens. So tell us about the first job you had in local government, and how old were you?
First, thank you for saying my late teens, because that helps put context to 33 years. I'm not old. I'd like to get that out of the way. I was in high school. I don't remember the exact age, to be honest with you, but I was in high school, and I had moved with my family to Greensboro from Asheboro, North Carolina. I was so excited to be here, and I was a pretty good athlete, not great, and I was having a difficult year in transition in high school, and my first sport was basketball, and I didn't get to play that year, so I was introduced to the game of tennis, which I had never played before, but made a pretty good transition, and there was a part-time job available working for the City of Greensboro, running tennis courts, being an attendant, working on tennis court maintenance, and working with youth. And so we did camps and all sorts of good things.
Okay, that is an interesting way to come into city government, part-time and teaching tennis and maintaining the courts, but what looked like just tennis coaching on the surface was certainly much more meaningful for you. So can you talk about how your interaction with the public, you said youth in particular, shaped your views for ensuring equal access to city services and resources? Yeah,
so I had just an interesting upbringing in the sense that growing up in a smaller community is very different. Asheboro is a wonderful place, but our experiences and our lifestyle was very different than what I got to experience here in Greensboro. And in particular, there were some things that happened along the way that made me realize that not everybody had access to the things that we consider to be quality of life, or really things that we should all have access to. And in tennis, I got to see how much appreciation the public had for anything that we offered. It was so very different than sometime later. I left the city because the city contracted out our services. I left for like 3 months, and I went and worked in the private sector, and I realized very quickly that there was a different appreciation for what I could offer, and I quickly came back to the city, and at the time I called my old boss, and my old boss said, I've been moved out to this facility that the city just started operating for the county called Bird Mill Park. Are you familiar with it? I was shocked. That was a facility that I went to as a 5-year-old, and it was a private facility. It was a private club for Burlington Industries, and sometime there after my dad left, and we had absolutely no income. There's a lot of kids in my family, and my mom was left to try and figure that out. And Burr Mill was one of the things that we had access to, or we thought we did. And my older brother at the time was going through a series of surgeries. He had limited mobility, and my mom was desperately seeking anything for my older brother and I to do to stay focused and active. And we drove to Greensboro to go play at Burr Mill, and we were greeted at the door and turned away, and we were told that we were no longer members after my dad had left. He was, but we were not, and we were not allowed to play there. We were not allowed to be there. And so my mother negotiated for us to at least existing in the facility, and they told us we could go be in the grass. And so she got a ball out. My brother and I made the best of it. And at that point, really shaped a few things. One, there was a whole lesson in how my brother navigated life and is so very successful and just did tremendous things along the way. But in that moment, he made the best of it. I was really young and I was angry and upset and I didn't understand what was happening, but I understood that it did not feel okay to be told you couldn't just be. And I certainly get the dynamics now as an adult, but I was also embarrassed for my mother, who was already struggling. She had to navigate so many challenges in life, and the fact that she couldn't even have that one moment.
Right.
You know, they could have said today, but after none of that. And it really gave me some perspective on the notion that there's a lot worse stories out there. There's a lot of folks who have a much more difficult time, more barriers. It's harder to navigate. And so even in that transition over to Vermeil, which at that point, I think I was working in the golf pro shop, I became obsessed with the notion of, one, making sure that everybody had access to recreation at that time, and then later learned to appreciate that they should have access to a lot of things.
Yes.
Food, homes, all the things that we know people should have access to. But I also was obsessed with making that product the absolute best it could be, because I wanted people to have the very best we could offer, no matter, you know, what their income was in life or what their challenges were. And I recall becoming completely obsessed with that facility. When I got there, it was not in the best of shape. We struggled. You know, it was a brand new operation, but it was a dilapidated facility. I don't think we even saw 100,000 visits a year. The team that I worked with and the people that I worked with, I'm proud to say, when I left, we were close to 1 million visits a year.
Wow.
That facility was completely renovated. We ran programs that would draw thousands from around the region, and it just became this passion to want to give people happiness and have access. And that later translated, you know, long story short, because obviously 33 years is a long time, I worked many jobs. I worked sun up to sundown. I became more and more obsessed. Maybe that's unhealthy, I don't know. But I've eventually made my way through Parks and Recreation, and I worked in probably every park and every facility that we have. And I felt the same way, no matter where we were or what we were doing or who we were working with. And I got to continuously see the benefit of someone who maybe also got experience or had experience being shut out, feeling welcome.
Yes.
That fed my soul. And then, you know, eventually I was Parks and Recreation Director, best gig in the world. I was nothing like Ron Swanson, even though the comparison was made quite often. And it's nothing like the show, although it's a little like the show. But I just felt I had the best job in the world, and opportunity came about to enter the city manager's office. I had absolutely no desire to do that. But I had a lot of encouragement from a lot of really incredible people who saw my passion and connected with my desire to help other people and asked me to please consider. And I think it was maybe 6 conversations, and the last of which was 2 hours long with the manager at the time, who was a person I deeply respected and still do. And she said, "How many community meetings have you been to?" I said, "I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands." And she said, "How many of them did you get frustrated because you couldn't help with something that came up during that meeting?" And I thought about that. I thought, oh, I could not help with the neighborhood that didn't have a grocery store for 18 years, and I couldn't help with this vacant lot, or I couldn't help with some of the activities that were, you know, not conducive to children playing in an area. And I remember always getting frustrated with that because I wanted to help with everything, not just what I did. And I said, well, yeah, I've gotten frustrated. And she said, what if you had the opportunity to help with all those things? And that's what eventually persuaded me to enter the manager's office on an interim basis, and I fell in love with it and stayed and applied for the permanent job. And that's where I've been for 13 years, and I've carried that philosophy into just so many great things with so many great people, and I'm so fortunate to do so.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving us that pathway to how you got to where you are. Thank you for sharing that very personal experience from childhood, which really shaped you in a way that we see now, how you took the negative and made it positive to make sure that other people don't have the experience, as you said, to not be made to feel welcome. And certainly from a city perspective, we don't ever want people to walk away feeling unwelcome. But I feel like those were building blocks to prepare you for being the Director of Parks and Recreation and taking Burr Mill and making it what it was by the time you left it. So can you talk about transitioning as a staff person to a department director, and what advice do you have for our employees who are trying to follow that same path?
You know, it's interesting. There are some major differences as you move along because there is a different depth of responsibility and a different distribution of your time. But I want to note that there's one thing that you don't lose, and that's what keeps you grounded. Why are you doing this? And that carries into every role, including a director or an assistant city manager or deputy city manager or even city manager. You always stay connected to the why, what brought you there. But the differences, I think, were hard for me. Honestly, I loved the team I worked with at Burr Mill. I never cry in front of other people. I'll never forget the day I said goodbye and I was moving into a division manager role. I remember getting to the table. I was going to make it short and sweet, and I just had this salty substance start falling from my eyes, which I did not recognize, and I could not stop. I loved it so much. I loved working with the people, and I loved being close to the action. But I quickly found out going into the next role, you still have some of that, but your reach is a little different. And now you're helping other people do that same thing, and you're helping public servants come into the profession and develop. And they start from a place where they need someone to help them gain experience. And now you're dealing with more neighborhoods and more people. And by the time you get to director, you're dealing with hundreds of employees and thousands of people. And your time and your distribution of time is very different because you are working through other people to activate and provide that access and that opportunity. But it's still a great perspective because you're sitting in a place where you are basically affording opportunity to others to get that same fulfillment that I got to receive and see every day. And I'm not going to lie, on occasion I jump back in. That's just my nature. I do that today, as you know. Can't help it because I love it, and I love that interaction, and I love being near people who truly appreciate what we do.
Well, we have all benefited from being under your tutelage and your leadership, so thank you for that, and so many lives that you've touched within our organization, but also the partnering organizations that we work with. And we want to continue this conversation, which we will do. We are talking with Deputy City Manager Chris Wilson. Coming up after the break, we'll look back on Chris's impact on the community, spotlighting his pivotal role with leading the city's community services departments and historic economic development endeavors. Stay with us. Welcome back to this special edition of Gate City Insider. Today we're talking one-on-one with Deputy City Manager Chris Wilson. So, Chris, you've given us kind of the backstory of how you came into the city and local government from a part-time position, and now, of course, as Deputy City Manager. But through the course of being Assistant City Manager, you were leading our community services departments for several years. That was libraries, museums, parks and recreation, housing, human rights, and my department, communications and marketing. I think this was a really great opportunity for synergy and collaboration between those teams as we work together to get a lot of big projects done. What are some of the outcomes from community services from that team that you're proud of?
Oh, wow. So, yeah, that was sort of my entrance into the city manager's office. I will just say that was such a great group. We had a wonderful team. I think we all shared a similar philosophy and approach with community. And of course, you're always much more professional than I was, but like in general, we share the same philosophies and we enjoyed working together. So I think the fruits of that particular group and the work that we did was so impactful. I'm thinking through just in my mind everything from quality of life programming to we worked on redevelopment projects together. We worked on initiatives. We actually shifted the needle on some of the policies here at the city, as I recall.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we dreamed so big, particularly with that group, because I felt comfortable with you all, and we had the ability to brainstorm together and not put restrictions on ourselves, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I always felt like we could come up with any vision or dream based on what we knew the community was asking for or needed, and no one ever said we shouldn't do that, or no one ever said you can't do that. It was always how to do it, and that was really fun. So I think we impacted the community in a really profound way, but the funny thing is if we did our job right, and none of us are the type of folks who would go out and buy a billboard, most people will never know the projects we worked on.
Yeah.
My favorite was sort of looping things back together. We worked on the Renaissance Shopping Center. That was the community who was very frustrated about not having a grocery store for 18 years. Everyone's talents came to the table in that equation, and we worked on just a really interesting deal with a great partner in Self-Help Ventures. We had tremendous community involvement. Everybody had a different part to play in trying to make that happen. The whole shopping center was renovated. We introduced a bank, food services. I think there was a gym or an exercise place. Now we have health services over there.
Pharmacy.
It was incredible, and it was actually going back to something that I was so frustrated about that I couldn't help with, and you all just were an absolute blessing and helped achieve that. And to me, that's one of those things that's legacy, right? That is absolutely hearing the community's concerns and trying to figure out a way, even though it's hard, trying to figure out a way to make it happen. And I cannot thank you guys enough. I truly enjoyed working with you all. I don't think I would have stayed, particularly in the manager's office, as long if it had not been for working with you all. And you all are dear friends of mine too. As you are, and you know that. So I can't say enough about that. You guys were just absolutely wonderful. But community services represents meeting the community where they are. And I love the philosophy. I share this all the time. We had a philosophy that we went into the community to hear first and then react. Not go there with a preconceived notion, but we always went together. And the idea was that any community meeting is not traditionally just about one thing. Something else is going to come up. And all of us had experienced that. And so we always went together as a group, and I love that. I love that team environment, and that was a very meaningful group to me. And to this day, I still have fond memories.
Well, we certainly enjoyed being led by you, but I think I'm going to put the credit into your wheel basket, because that idea of we can't do something, that was always your first reaction. Yes, we can. And we felt the ability and freedom to move forward with the ideas that we would shoot around the table, because we knew that you weren't one to tell us no. So thank you for that. And a lot of work teams don't get that opportunity to feel like you can bring your best self, but collectively there were so many power thought thinkers in our group that we just always seemed to have that synergy. But it was really powered by you and your willingness to let us be each of our respective best selves, but always letting us know it's like open season. And I think we benefited from that, and still to this day operate in that way, even though community services has kind of scattered. But I think we keep that in terms of how we approach things on a daily basis. So thank you for that.
That's very kind.
Now, internships are not uncommon in the workplace, but you did something very unique where you were intentionally bringing in college students to see the layers behind the city manager's office. So talk a little bit about rolling out the red carpet to these young people, and what was your vision for wanting them to have that city manager office experience?
Well, so I actually got to do an internship with the city, mostly because I was working for the city, and at that time there was really no way for me to do something different. But I did get to experience different things through that internship, and so I know how valuable that can be in terms of experience. And I taught for 3 years at UNCG, and I was a real proponent for learned experience, not an internship where you just go in and kind of show up and check the box, but learned experience. You know, get ingrained, understand what we're doing. And I'm so very much a believer in what we do, that I believe if I can convince someone else that what we do is probably more than what they see from the surface, but it's so meaningful intrinsically that maybe they'll consider it themselves, and maybe it's for them. And if I get 1 person out of 10 that it's for them, and I find that person that's passionate about it, imagine how much good they'll do. So when I get to the manager's office, I am not a traditional public administrator. We've covered that. I never will be. I am very unorthodox in my approach. I'm constantly trying to change the way we do things. And in this particular case, internships were not something that I think were really considered. There had been some, but you know, the experiences were maybe not great. The timing was not great. Nobody wanted to dedicate time to it. I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved it. I loved the opportunity to work with a person who was wanting to learn, impressionable, curious. It's one of those things that is a real responsibility, and I take it seriously, but it's also fun.
Yes.
So in this particular case, we sought to bring people into a space that often was considered off limits because we deal with so many things. They can be very high profile things, or they can be very sensitive things, and sometimes they can be controversial things. And the idea of bringing someone into that space was considered not very apropos at the time. And I just felt like, hey, you know what? We're public service.
Yes.
Come on in, check us out, see what we do. See if maybe it's for you. And we had such a good experience the first go. We ended up bringing on several over the years, and that morphed into a wonderful relationship with Campus Greensboro, by which now we get interns who get a medley of exposure. They get coaches and mentoring and connections to companies and experiences from a social aspect in Greensboro, and they really get entrenched in the community and then connect it back to their experience with us. So I'm incredibly proud of that. I hope that tradition will continue, but that is a really easy way to give back.
Yes, it is. And thank you for making that an option, because as you said, there's always that mystery and mystique behind the city manager's office. Even sometimes with our employees, they are a little weary to go to the city manager's office. But I enjoyed getting to meet the young people, and you made it a point to have each of us have a role in what they were doing, and to see them continue on in some respects with public administration, but also keeping in touch with us and letting us know what they do. We kind of forge these lasting relationships, and it's nice to see the impact. So thank you for bringing that into our space. Now, as Deputy City Manager, you have had a very core focus on economic development, coordinating that with our Chamber of Commerce, and this recent couple of years has been multi-million-dollar project, one after the next, sometimes in the billions, and your fingerprints are all over that, and just so much to be proud of. But when the city makes the announcements for huge companies such as Toyota or Boom Supersonic, just recently Jet Zero, Mayor Vaughn always reminds us this doesn't just happen in a vacuum, and I don't necessarily know that the community understands the length of time that goes into these negotiations before the commitment is made that they're coming to Greensboro. So can you talk a little bit about that, just so people can have a greater appreciation when we make those announcements talking about investment and new jobs?
That's a really good point. I think you're right. I don't think we all love the headline and we all love the benefit, but and that's okay. You shouldn't have to think about it. But the reality is, it does take so many people, particularly in these larger projects. So I'll start here. In my role currently, I marry the economic development perspective of what we do at the city, along with our great partners at the Chamber, with our development services. So I have to say this, there's different interpretations of this team. This team that I work with now, which is also really wonderful because they do such profound things on a daily basis, is called the Get Stuff Done team. Some people call it other things, but it's Get Stuff Done. And these are the folks who put in infrastructure for water and sewer, your streets, your engineering, your facilities, all those things that make a city what it is and put the bones in the body of a city. These are the folks who do that. So in economic development, there's the aspect of the recruitment, which the Chamber very much leads. We have a wonderful team member, Marshall Yandel, who is also part of that and sort of goes between the city and the Chamber with things that come up along the way. But as you can imagine, when you're considering a community, there's many things you consider. It could be logistics. It could be exactly where you're located and how you would get product or how you would ship or do things. It's also, what are you connected to? What are the things that are nearby that support your business? It's, do you have a shovel-ready site or do you have a site that's workable? What is already there? What can be there? Yes. A lot of sites don't already have water and sewer or the right road infrastructure or many other things. Power. Duke Power is an incredible partner for us, or Duke Energy, excuse me. So those are things that happen as part of a team. So as a recruiter usually comes in on behalf of the company, you give your best pitch. And I will say our pitch is a little different because we know we're uniquely Greensboro. We're not going to give you the same old pitch. Yeah, we're going to tell you how much, we're going to tell you what we can do, but we're also going to tell you what's great about Greensboro, North Carolina, and all the things that go into being Greensboro. We're proud of our history. Yeah. We're proud of our multiple cultures that come together in this community. And so we have this great first pitch, and we talk about how conveniently located we are in the state. But then beyond that, you get into the details, right? You have to know that the numbers work. You have to know that this is going to work for your business. You have to know that, talk about community services, you have to know that the schools are right for your employees. You have to know that there's park spaces. There's things to do like the Science Center or Tanger. And that's all part of that. Beyond that, can you get water and sewer to my site? Can you build a bridge? Can you reroute these roads? Can you help us navigate this site to be conducive to what we want to build? And that's where we come in. As you can imagine, that's a lot of information being put together, but it's also information that can shift day to day. as you're the recruiter or as you're the company and you're thinking through things, you may in fact have to consider, I overestimated this or I underestimated this. Can you go back and recalculate what we may need?
Oh, wow.
Can you go back and redesign what you thought you were going to do? I have just this awesome team that I work with who does the real work. They are incredibly creative. They are so responsive, and they're always ready to move on a dime to meet the need of that potential company that's coming. And that is really a big part of how we've been able to land all these great things. I get to play a small part. I am so thankful to even be in the mix. I'm the person who's been here long enough to know that there was a time where we didn't have all this success.
Yes.
We really struggled. There was a time that manufacturing was struggling. We had a lot of companies that had left. It was a real time of concern, and I was here. And I recall that, and in Greensboro, it's just so resilient. We found a way, we found a path, and it took years. But you look at our economy today, and that's very much built on still manufacturing. I think about the regional success in the Toyota battery manufacturing plant. I think about the success around aviation, which is incredible. This last announcement, historic in nature. Never in my wildest dreams, if you had asked me 10 years ago, would we be talking about, almost 15,000 jobs and $4 billion worth of investment, I would have laughed you out of the room. But if there's a will, there's a way. And great people at the chamber, great people at the city, great people at the state. I cannot say enough about our great leadership at the state and the help that they provided and the leadership they provided. It's almost as if the stars aligned and the right people were in place and the right opportunities came about, and it's truly our time now.
Well, we coined this whole phenomenon as Greens booming, because it's almost like overnight we just became this darling of economic development projects and people wanting to be here, and that's the beauty of it. As you said, we're proud of our city, we're proud of all that we have to offer, but it really puts the stamp on it when people from the outside come in and chose to be here.
Exactly.
There is still so much ground to cover. Coming up after the break, we'll wrap up our conversation with Deputy City Manager Chris Wilson. He will take us on a tour of the city, pointing out familiar landmarks he played a pivotal role in bringing to fruition. You're watching Gate City Insider. Stay with us. Welcome back to this special edition of Gate City Insider. We're lifting up the many accomplishments of Deputy City Manager Chris Wilson as he retires from the city after more than 30 years of service. So now we are back, Chris, to talk about just storytelling. That was an important key component when you interviewed me. And coming on board with the city, you were just very adamant about how do we tell our story. So thank you for all of the support that you give to me and my team as we try to assist in that effort. But how would you say over the years community engagement has evolved, or has it improved in terms of residents and their willingness to join us in the work that we do?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. One, we changed our approach, and I would like to think that some of the folks that I've worked with along the way, like yourself, have helped shift our culture so that we're a hear first and react after. I think when I first came on, there was really a notion that all these great professionals had a good sense of what needed to happen, and therefore, here you go, public, this is what we're going to do. And that's really not a great way to serve the public. we have learned over the years that the best way to do that is to hear from the public first, and then think through and work with the public. Don't just react, but work with the public to figure out best approach. And I think what's happened over the years is we have all these opportunities to do that, and you've helped branch that out. When I first came to work for the city, I think we were still doing clip art flyers or something. That's probably not a thing anymore. Most people watching won't even know what that is. But you know, you've helped us branch to radio and podcasts, and our TV shows are even a lot more in depth, and they're on all these different platforms. We're in all these digital platforms. We've got social media. Some of them I don't even know about. There's so many, and I used to be really up on all that. And so now we have all these opportunities to be able to communicate out and receive what the community really wants to see or know or do or hear. And it gives us a better ability to reach everyone. Now, there's still no substitute for good old-fashioned water cooler conversation or going to a community meeting and sitting down and really hashing things out with somebody. But we have more opportunity, and as a result, I think we're more present.
Yes.
I feel we're much more present these days, and so that's a big shift in my opinion. I think the other thing is maybe because of good folks like yourself and so many people I work with, I think our culture shifted to have a lot of people say yes, and a lot of people start from a place of how can we make this work. Today's society can be very divisive and polarizing, and sometimes that can be really emotional. You can't let that dissuade you from still helping other people. As a matter of fact, that should be a driver that help is needed now more than ever. And it's incumbent on us to come to a place of kindness and generosity and support, no matter what the other person is going through, because you don't know what they're dealing with. And I've seen so many people deal with some very difficult circumstances, and that can be the case in public service. I've seen so many more people in our organization now who start from that place of, how can I help you? Let's talk about what we're trying to achieve and then figure out how we get there. I'm really proud of that. And I hope we continue to see that, because I think, just from what I see in my own observations, we're so needed right now.
Yes.
We are absolutely needed, and we don't need to be polarizing in our opinions. We don't need to be affiliated with any particular set of views. We just need to care, and we need to support other people. And I'm really proud to see that, much more so now than I ever did. And you are a person that reflects that, and that's why I've appreciated you so much.
Thank you. And to your point of how we're needed now more than ever, I think the contrast I've always used over the years between city government and federal government is we are the government closest to the people we serve, and it makes it easier for us to know the needs, as you're saying, to hear from people directly, but then to be able to react and respond as needed because we're in the community with them. So I would say the higher up in government you go, the farther removed you are from the people you serve. So I think that's been the quality and value for me to work in municipal government, because you see each day the impact and just that return on the investing of time. And you've invested so much time, but I think you can look back, and you're going to kind of take us on this tour of the city of all the things that you have had a hand in, that we can kind of look at and say, Chris Wilson. And that goes from just employee benefits that you've been able to impact, expanding our benefits, improving our benefits. You created an Office of Sustainability, which we never had before, just focusing on how, as an organization, are we making decisions that impact our environment, both within our facilities, but then our vehicles, just the whole 9 yards. You mentioned earlier the Renaissance Shopping Co-op, bringing a grocery store component to a community that had food insecurity. Battleground Parks District, the evolution of that space, LeBauer Park, which was created from scratch, Windsor Chavis NoCo in the process, and we look forward to you coming back and celebrating that grand opening. And then, of course, the Downtown Greenway. That was just in its infancy when I started with the city, and now we're on the final mile and getting ready to wrap that up this year. And now the Mill District has its own brand, and that was all because of you. So those are just a few examples of some really major landmarks that people can drive around the community and be familiar with. But that requires relationships that you had to develop and nurture and really kind of pull people into these concepts and shape the outcomes. So can you talk about that part of your job?
Yeah, so all of those projects have one thing in common, and that is I'm just a helper. Maybe I helped with the concept, maybe I helped with connecting, maybe I helped with parts and pieces, but some great leaders were involved, great teams were involved, like minds. I'm a small piece. I'm helpful at connecting dots. I'm really helpful at pitching really crazy ideas that somebody else usually has to try to figure out. But I'm a helper, and in each of those cases, what a wonderful experience. Not only are those things that are impactful for our community, both now and into the future, all of those things will, of course, evolve over time in how they provide service to the community. But part of that experience was the great people I got to meet. I can name an awesome leader on every one of those things, and people who were so visionary or people who were so determined. That's really the thing for me. That's the driver. I love working on any and all of those projects. But when I get into a situation where there's an opportunity to help, I don't do a lot of sports analogies, but since I played basketball, anybody who's ever played on a team understands that different people play different roles.
Yes.
Well, the cool thing for me was I get to play a different role on every team. And I like versatility. I like being flexible. And in each one of those scenarios, I played a little bit different role. Battleground Parks District, absolutely. Glenn Dobrigos and I and Roger Bardsley at the time, Glenn, of course, is the head of the Science Center, and Roger was my counterpart at the county. We had such a wonderful time, but we got to be visionary, and we got to be creative, and we got to think through big ideas and things that are yet to even come to fruition and will. But then there's other projects where the community led the Renaissance Shopping Center. I got to help be a connector. I got to listen. I got to meet wonderful people who had passion and knew what could happen and believed in what could happen with that shopping center. And I got to help. I got to help connect. Being able to go and be what someone needs me to be is probably one of the most fun aspects of what I've been able to do. I absolutely never will and do not care to get credit for anything. That's not what I'm here for. I'm doing this because I want to help.
Yes.
Matter of fact, in most cases, I'd love for somebody else to get the credit. I'm not going to buy a billboard, and I'm not going to put my name on it, but I am going to show up, and I'm going to give you everything I got. I'm going to help you get to where you want to be. And if I get to see you celebrate that, that means everything to me. I want to help other people be successful. And I hope I'll always do that in some capacity.
Yes. Well, that brings me to my final question, and you just kind of led us into it. You've rightfully earned the reputation of being our organization's biggest cheerleader. Now that you're entering retirement, what causes will you champion?
First and foremost, my wife and my sons. My wife is a tremendous leader in this community, and I just admire her so much, and I want to support her in everything she does. My sons are both, one has now had experience working in parks, one is working with youth and doing programming, and they both have dabbled in some things that mean everything to me, but they both have the best hearts, and I could not be more proud of that. I want to champion what they do, and I want to see where they go next, and I want to see the impact they're going to have, because I know they're going to help other people. I know they're going to help the communities that they serve, and that's very exciting. I'm going to keep taking great pictures of, that I'll brag about. I take a few good photos here and there. I'm going to keep taking great photos.
They're excellent photos.
I love celebrating Greensboro, and I'm going to continue to do that. So I have an Instagram page that's dedicated to nothing but my photos, and many of them are highlighting Greensboro in aspects that we don't normally take the time to stop and look at or think about. I want to share with people things that I think are really cool about Greensboro. I'm going to continue to write. I have my own website, and I write about public service and what that's like, and how it's evolved over time, and why we do what we do, because I want people to have a better perspective of why we choose this and how we navigate it, so that maybe we can come to a better understanding. So I'm going to continue to do that. I am going to continue to work, and I'm very much going to be doing that in a community-minded capacity, and I'll be supporting our community, and I'm going to be championing you guys for sure. I will probably still be your biggest cheerleader. I don't doubt that at all. I love this city. This city adopted me and accepted my family and I, no matter what our circumstances were or what our differences may have been at the time. This city absolutely allowed us to be who we are, and we never felt judged here for it. And so I owe this city everything. So I'll continue to champion Greensboro. I love it to death.
Well, we love you, Chris, and thank you so much for every day, every minute, every second, every hour, every year. We are definitely going to miss your presence in the office, but your presence is evident in each quadrant of this city. So visiting the places you help to create will be a pleasant reminder of you and your contribution to our quality of life. And it's truly been a pleasure and an honor to serve on your team, and I appreciate your leadership over the years. And on behalf of all of our city employees, thank you for your dedicated service, and we wish you all the best in retirement. And we just can't say enough. Like, thank you just doesn't cover it. And I'm so glad you will still be in the community, that we will get to continue interacting, perhaps even working together in different capacities. But this has been a really, really positive experience for me, and I know I can say that for so many others.
Well, you've been a positive influence on me. And this feels so final, and it's hard. But it's not.
It's not.
It's not. And I'm going to miss you guys terribly. It's going to be an adjustment. But
it's time.
Yeah, it's time.
And good things are right on the horizon.
Yep.
Well, thank you for being so candid and sharing your story, your path, and just perhaps inspiring other people to enter into public service, inspiring those who are already in it to see that you can start from part-time and coaching tennis to becoming deputy city manager. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That concludes this special edition of Gate City Insider. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.